Hello and welcome back to Bite Size Boxing. Apologies for the lack of content this week. I mean, for starters, there hasn't really been that much to talk about, and secondly, I got drafted in to cover the out-of-hours shift, so we're relying on the energy drinks to get through today. But what I want to talk about today, to start off with, is Wilder versus Herndon. So this is a fight taking place this Saturday, I believe in sort of some back alley somewhere in America. And it is, of course, Wilder's comeback fight after being flattened by Zhilei Zhang. So it's an interesting one, to be frank, because I don't think Wilder has a lot left. I think, what was he, nearly 40, 41? So he's clearly on the back end of his career. He's coming off a couple of bad defeats. Obviously, that knockout loss to Zhang was very bad. It was comprehensive. He barely had any success in the fight. And as soon as he did try and open up in any way, shape or form, he got flattened. So it doesn't bode well. Obviously, prior to that, he got outboxed comprehensively by Joseph Parker. And then prior to that, of course, you had the third Fury fight. And then after that, in the interim, you had the Helenius fight. So Wilder's not been on a good run of form. He hasn't won, a meaningful fight since, would it be Brazil? Was there anyone he beat after? I think it might have been Brazil, Off the top of my head, I haven't got everything in front of me. So we're going back about 6 years. So this isn't good. I do think Wilder is certainly over the best of his prime by quite some time. I don't think Wilder is ever going to quite get back to the fighter that he used to be. Another issue seems to be, and a lot of people have picked up on this, myself included, that Wilder has lost that kind of venom that he used to rely on. He would be sat, getting picked off, getting outboxed, but you always knew he could land that Hail Mary. And as recent, not only has he not landed it, he's looked quite gun-shy. I don't know whether they were the Fury fights that have done him in mentally, but for whatever reason, he is seriously struggling to pull the trigger. And when essentially you only rely on pulling the trigger, that doesn't bode well. So going into this Herndon fight, I mean, it's just a gimme. It's a fight that he's supposed to look good in. He should go in and he should wipe out Herndon within a couple of rounds. I think if this fight gets out of, say, the third round, then we really should be quite worried, and I think we can quite firmly stick a fork in Wilder. But there are still fights out there for him. I think, of course, the Anthony Joshua fight will always be there. But that being said, there seems to be sort of a few people now who don't really seem to be as keen on fighting AJ as they once were. Not because they're scared of AJ. As I've said in previous videos, I don't think AJ has much left at all. I think he looks shot. But the big draw for AJ was that for the longest time he was the biggest commercial draw in the whole of the sport. That is no longer the case at all. This is a guy we just saw get bounced all over the ring by Daniel Dubois. So how much do you really earn fighting Anthony Joshua now? If you're Deontay Wilder, you could fight a Derek Chisora for Derek Chisora's 50th fight, for example. And I'm not saying you make exactly the same as AJ money, but I think you make very good money. You make multi-millions for that fight, and it's probably a more winnable fight, and then you can still take an AJ fight after that. So I think there is a very good chance we see, someone like Derek Chisora next. Because, again, for me, something like that makes sense. Chisora in his prime for prime, I think stylistically would have been a nightmare for Wilder. But this isn't a prime Chisora, as I've spoken about before. The good run that Chisora's on is more indicative of the fighters he's been fighting. And, I mean, people like Otto Wallin and Joe Joyce, I mean, oh dear, oh dear. The fact that you are getting beaten by a Derek Chisora who, as I've previously said, his balance is gone, he can barely put one foot in front of the other, that really speaks to the volumes of the fighters he's been fighting. So I still think Derek Chisora is there for the taking. And as far gone as Wilder appears to be, I would still make Wilder a favourite in that fight. I do think he is fresher, clearly. As bad as he's looked, I still would fancy him to land the right hand at some point on Chisora. So if you're a Wilder, you would look at someone like Chisora and you think, say I can earn, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 million fighting Chisora. Well, I'll do that, rather than earning, I don't know, 5 or 6 million for fighting AJ, and, it's a risky fight. So, you let me know what you think. I mean, I'm not really going to preview this Herndon fight because there's not really any point. I think that is his name, Herndon. Again, it's a journeyman. It's someone that he's being put in there as a soft touch to look good against and to build some confidence. It remains to be seen how he looks. If he goes in there and blitzes him in a round or so, then maybe we could throw Wilder back in there quite quickly, or maybe he will need another confidence builder before a big fight at the end of the year. So that remains to be seen. That's the only intrigue I've really got in this fight, is just to see how Wilder looks. But what say you? Who do you think would be next for Wilder after this? And, do you think he can still get any wins at a good level? I have heard some people talking about Usyk. I think that would be a disastrous fight. I have no interest in that fight, to be frank. I've somebody who've always, historically, even when Usyk was at cruiserweight, I always picked Usyk over Wilder in a hypothetical matchup. It's just style. Styles make fights, and I do not see a world in which the angles line up against a tricky southpaw who's constantly moving, who's giving, lateral and foot movement constantly to Wilder. Wilder would not be able to beat Alexander Usyk, in my opinion. So, especially at this stage as well, it's just not going to happen. So, I have no interest in that fight. I would be much more interested to see him with his contemporaries, who I believe he stands a better chance of beating. Again, the Joshuas, the Chisoras of the world, that kind of thing. But what say you? You let me know. You take it easy. Thank you very much. Cheers.